Hi, my name is Mark Pappas, and I'm a general business management major, and I'm a sophomore at Morehead State, and I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. And I'm going to be doing my oral presentation on job interviews and how to make a good impression on a potential employer. And this is a really important topic for college students and kids my age, just because once we make it through graduation, this is really that next big step into launching your career and getting a job and becoming successful. So starting off, these are just some tips on even being considered for an interview. And this first one is having a well rounded resume. And I think a lot of college students and kids at colleges all around are all really worried about their GPAs and keeping their cumulative up. And while this is really important, I think it's also maybe more important to be a well rounded person. And I think companies definitely look at that on your resume. And some things you can do to put on your resume would be just joining clubs. Like I know Morehead offers business clubs, like the college version of JBLA. I can't think of the abbreviation off the top of my head, but that would be a really good club to join. And some of the things you could do would be community service. I know Morehead has a place called Horizon Village, which I believe houses special needs kids and actually adults too. And they offer community service for Morehead students and fraternities and sororities. Um, so just being really involved and getting uh, into your community and your college and building your resume is something that employers will definitely look at and will help you get an interview. Second off, having a clean social media. You know, it's the 21st century, and employers and companies around the world are all going to look at your Facebook and your Twitter and your Snapchat and all that stuff. So you're really going to want to make sure it's clean because you don't want to have something on there that they could look at and see as inappropriate or just have it be an immediate turnoff, and then you don't even get considered for the interview for the job that you really want. Thirdly, setting up a LinkedIn page. This is something I wasn't really all that informed about coming into this class and even this semester in general. But doing some research for this project, I found out how important a LinkedIn page can be, and it can really help you get your name out there. And a lot of professional people, I would say almost all professional people, probably have a LinkedIn page, and you can join that community of people and become a real professional by making a LinkedIn page. Um, Next, this kind of goes hand in hand with that, is just networking. Um, it's arguably one of the most important things in the business world is making connections and networking with people around the world. And while you're in college, you can really help yourself out by making connections with your professors. And then if you do end up joining those clubs, other students and peers and just people all around you in your community, because you never know who's going to have that great connection to help set you up with your job or help set you up with an interview or anything. So networking is really important, and especially with your professors, you always want to have a good connection. Um, Next would be once you become maybe a junior or a senior, obtaining an internship, because these internships a lot of times, as this quote would help me back up, can lead directly into jobs. And I personally know that both of my siblings had internships their senior years of college and ended up leading directly into their jobs that they still have now years later, because they did well in those internships, which is basically a tryout for that company. And because they did well, they got the job and are now living in Chicago and Seattle and making pretty good money. So that really helped them out. And lastly, obviously, if you want to get a job, you got to graduate. The next slide and topic is about prepping for an interview. Going into the interview, obviously, you want to know a lot about the company and do some research about the company that's going to be interviewing you, because a lot of times this can show knowledge and intelligence about the company itself, and they may be impressed with your knowledge about them. And obviously, they're going to ask you about the company, so you want to have a well-informed answer. Um, Next, the next tip for prepping for an interview would be just knowing yourself, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, knowing how to describe your work ethic and all those kinds of things, because the interview is about you, and they're obviously going to ask you about you, so you want to have a well-informed answer, and you want to be able to it just says a lot about yourself if you can explain your weaknesses, and then eventually, if you do get the job, be able to turn those into strengths. And it says a lot about your character if you just know yourself inside and out. The next tip would be understanding common questions that an interviewer might ask you, because there's only so many topics they can bring up in the business world. And actually doing research for this project, I found some websites that had like 100 common interview questions, and the other things that came up were like a book that had common questions the interviewer might ask you. And if I was preparing for an interview, I definitely want to check that out, because if I study those questions and know that I have a great answer for them, then I won't be caught off guard by a common question an interviewer might want to ask me. And then next would be just practice. Going into the interview, you want to make sure that you've studied yourself and your own answers, and maybe just even practice in the mirror. It might sound dumb, but if you know your body language, and it just can give you a lot of confidence going into the interview, being able to practice and have your answers kind of thought out so you aren't caught off guard in the interview itself. Speaking of the interview itself, here are some tips once you actually get that interview and you're getting interviewed. First off would be dressing appropriately. Obviously, this one might seem like common sense, but your dress and your clothes is the first thing an employer or an interviewer is going to notice about you. So you want to make sure you're dressed appropriately and professionally, obviously. And then the second tip would be coming in with energy and enthusiasm. Nobody wants to hire somebody who's just a negative Nelly or boring or doesn't really bring anything energetically to the table. And you just want to enter that room with confidence and just have some energy about you. So it gives them a good first impression, because some research I found out doing this project is that a lot of times interviewers know within the first 4 or 5 minutes whether you're a good candidate or not. So you want to make a good first impression when you're coming in with your confidence, and just having really good energy and enthusiasm can help out a lot more than you would think. And then the next tip would be trying to balance between being polite but also being assertive and confident, because you want to be assertive in a way that is give them confidence in hiring you and give them confidence in you as a person, that you have some self-confidence about yourself, but you also don't want to come off as cocky and impolite. So you're going to want to try and balance that and ride that line, because this can say a lot about your character. And if you're polite but you're also confident, they'll have some confidence in you. And then lastly, don't be afraid to follow up. I learned this actually. Can't think of the chapter off the top of my head. But it said that after an interview, it's a really good idea to actually send a thank you card or a thank you note or something, and just thank the interviewer. And then also, if there's anything you want to get off your chest or something you forgot to say in the interview itself, you can include that in the thank you note and get that information to them. And then also, if you send them the thank you card, you're just kind of in the back of their brain as a good candidate, and it might give you a leg up over some of the other people who didn't send a thank you card. And then lastly, don't give up. I included this in this just because I thought it was really inspirational, and it's just anybody can have a bad situation or a bad interview where they feel like they weren't very effective in getting their opinions across and didn't present themselves very well. That can happen to anybody. So if that happens to you, could happen to me, I don't know. But if it does, just don't give up. You're always going to bounce back. And in the words of Jimmy Valvano, if you haven't seen that speech, you should definitely look it up. But don't give up. Don't ever give up. And that could take you a long way in life, because it's a roller coaster.